Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, today we are going to be taking a look at the Elemental and Undead reveals. There is a huge overhaul for Elementals. So many Elementals are being removed. I'm not going to touch on every single one of them, just a few that I think stand out. Foulblood's being removed. That's a big one, but we've already seen that with Demons. Bramble Witch is out. We've already seen that with Quillbore, so those are pretty impactful. No more Carbonic Copy. That card just kind of comes and goes. It hasn't really been around super consistently recently, but it's usually very strong whenever it is. It's very easy to put a lot of gems on this, and suddenly you have a huge minion, and you have ×2 to stats. Super good. Frostling was pretty impactful as well, because we used it with Moss of the Schloss, and then you had something that was immune to Bramble Witch and was just very, very good. Good synergy there. Then we see Moss being removed as well, so that's that combo package. Azurite is out, Tavern Tempest is out, Wraith is out, and Rock. My God, this whole bottom row is crazy impactful, because that's the core of Elementals. The core of Elementals is Wraith. Now, Wraith has been around for a very long time, so it's okay. It's time to make some space for new things, some new design. But man, that is going to take a while to mentally adjust to that you cannot get a Wraith anymore with Elementals. The first new card is called Windfall Tornado. When you sell this card, discover an Elemental and give it this minion stats. That doesn't look too impressive, but then we look at the golden version. When you sell this, discover 2 Elementals and give them this minion stats. That's amazing. Because now we're doubling our stats. So if you're going to make a huge regular Windfall Tornado and you sell it and you gamble on getting a cleave or a shield, sure, that's fine, but it's, basically just make a cleave with extra steps, and, it doesn't always work. But if you are buffing 2 of these and then you triple them, and now you sell it and you have, 1 huge cleave and then 1 huge other elemental, or 2 huge cleaves or whatnot, that's super relevant. So that seems like a really fun thing to do if you're ahead in an elemental game and you can afford to just buff some Windfall Tornadoes. That has some really, really good potential, where when you do triple them, you get twice the stats. Dune Dweller is a new 1-drop. When you sell it, elementals in the tavern have +1/+1 this game. This is a 3/2. Wow, that's good, because I would assume that an effect like this would be on a lower statted minion, where you would actually be pretty sad to put this on your board, but you can buy this on turn 1 and still tie a reasonable number of units, and as early as turn 3 you could sell this, buff even 1 elemental in the shop and recover a little bit of the essentially stat loss of selling the 3/2, and then every time you buy an elemental from then on, you're still getting that advantage. So that seems reasonable for sure. Fireballer, this is fantastic, but when you sell this, give your minions +1 attack. Improve your future ballers. Yeah, I like this. They have a sense of humor. I love that. So we'll see there are different types of ballers, as there are in real life. Right? This is a fire baller. We're going to see a different baller in a little bit. So this is a 2-drop and it's a 4/3. That from the get-go is fine. That's not something where you're like, oh my god, this is horribly understated. So that is generally the approach they take with newer cards. Newer cards will have very good base stats, so you don't feel bad for trying out a new card. If you have a new card that is horribly understated because it has a powerful effect, you can still feel pretty sad by buying the card and then not getting the payoff. Whereas if the card has some good base stats, you never really feel terrible. Like, let's say you never do anything with, baller synergy, then you're like, it's a 4/3, buff my board, that's fine. When you sell this 1 attack to your board, that seems nice, right? And then obviously the golden one is twice as good. Snowballer, when you sell this, give your minions +1 health. Improve your future ballers. They have synergy with each other, where if you sell a fireballer, you also improve your snowballer. It's very thematic. And also here, we see the stat line is a 3/4 as a 2-drop. That is also perfectly fine. You're not going to feel horrible for buying this and then not getting any baller synergy later. Icaron the Protector. It's a tier 4 3/1 with Divine Shield that has a text: after you play an elemental, give it Divine Shield until next turn. That feels a little bit awkward, because you're going to get a tempo spike, but then the Divine Shield is gone afterwards. I think that's still a really good tempo option, and especially if you already have some tavern buffs, this is a Divine Shield, similar to Cyclone. Cyclone has Wind Fury, sure, but this is a much more powerful effect for your warband, and oftentimes when your shop is already buffed, you just want to have the stuff with Divine Shield. The fact that this is a 3/1 does not matter that much. It's a bit awkward if you do have to play it as a 3/1, but then if you play, say, 2 elementals that turn, you're getting additional shields, which gives you good tempo. And if you can triple it, it says, after you play an elemental, give it Divine Shield, flat. That's really good. So suddenly you're George. Suddenly your whole board is Divine Shielded. Once you already have some shop buffs, this seems really good to hunt down for a triple. Meteorite Crasher is a 3-drop. After you sell Elemental, gain 2/2. Stat line is a 2/4, so again, I wouldn't really buy this unconditionally, but if I say have an Elemental on my board that I'm going to sell that turn and I roll into a Meteorite Crasher, then it seems totally fine to buy because then I can put a 4/6 on my board with upside. Probably lose a little bit too much tempo if I'm just buying a 2/4, but if I'm already planning to sell an Elemental, this is fine. Twilight Primordium. Primordium? Primordium. Battlecry. Give an Elemental 2/2. Improved by each other minion you played this turn. Keep in mind that Wraith is out, so it's not as easy anymore to just spam a boatload of cards. Elementals and Pirates used to be so good at that with Tethys, and then you have Wraith, and then you buy a Elemental, and then, oh my god, this would have been broken if Wraith was still in the game. Without Wraith, I don't know how easy it is to just play a bunch of units, because all of a sudden you're paying for those rerolls and it's not as easy. You are probably gonna need Brand and then some other economy support, but you can use this to buff the original card we talked about, Windfall Tornado. And then if you put the buff on Windfall Tornado and then triple it, all of a sudden you have a huge golden Windfall Tornado that you can then sell and get 2 other big minions. So there is some really nice synergy between those two. Ultraviolet Ascendant. It's a tier 6 5/3, but it has the effect, start of combat, give your elementals +2/+1, and this upgrades after you play an elemental. So if you get this card early enough and you can build it up, this is quite a significant boost. Because when you think about Rock, it gives your board +2 attack per elemental you've played, or +2 health. The downside with Rock is that you do need to have the minions that you're buffing already on the board. Otherwise, those buffs are, wasted, or you're going to have to, lose some of that when you trade out for better units. The upside here is that as long as the Ultraviolet Ascendant is on the board, you're getting 2/1 per elemental you've played, but this remembers the buff, so that when you start to combat and you say play a fresh minion, that minion will still get all the buffs. So that is really nice. The catch is that this only buffs elementals. So you do have to play pure elemental. You can't use it to say buff a warping or something like that, which a Rock could do. But we can see that this is a Rock replacement. And if you're playing pure elemental, it just is very, very cool that you can use this to store the buffs and then just play a new unit, and the new unit will already get all the buffs. So really nice. Temperature shifts, get a fireballer and a snowballer. Yeah, that seems really good because those are elementals, and there's lots of cards that want you to play elementals. So Ultraviolet Ascendant, Primordium just wants you to play cards. So paying 4 gold for 2 units, and they're both elementals, is very good if you're playing this. Then Genie has been changed. This is an older card for those of you who haven't seen it before. Genie has been around for a very long time. The old effect used to be just Death Rattle, get an elemental. Now they've changed it to have Battle Cry and Death Rattle. That is a huge buff, right? That works with Brand, that works with Titus. You can farm elementals this way. This is the support for the elemental spamming strategy as opposed to using Recycling Wraith. So if you can get early Genies to get your elemental production online, the cards we just covered that have a huge payoff for playing lots of cards, and elementals in particular, are going to have a really good time. Oh my god, is that a tier 4 Nomi? Yeah, this is something. So this used to be tier 5, right? After you play an elemental, elementals in the tavern have +1/+1 this game. Nomi is really a fan favorite. Anytime this card appears in the shop, chat just spams, Nomi, we can play Nomi. Generally because Nomi is a greedier, slower strategy, but when it works, it really works. You have these just huge elementals in the shop that you can triple, and then you get like 2 or 3 times the stats, depending on how you do it. Yeah, that is an interesting change, putting this on tier 4. I don't know if that's actually okay, because we're going to have no additional mechanic, right? No buddies, no quests, no trinkets. So just rolling 2 Nomis early and then just starting to buff. But who knows, right? Maybe with Wraith out, it's not that good anymore. We'll see. We'll see. Either way, I'm excited by this, and I like that they're taking a chance with this. Let's put Nomi on 4 and see what happens. Anomaly is now a 3-drop, but you get 2 free refreshes. I think that's fair with the loss of Wraith, having a little bit of that refresh synergy, right? Some support where you don't have to pay for rolls. That seems good. That seems like a fun change they made. Wildfire is back to being tier 3. Not much else has changed. Barnstormer is now a 5-drop. It's also a battle cry now. So that is great. Now, if you're already playing Nomi, you can use Barnstormer in synergy with that, because Nomi gives you stat boosts every time you play an elemental. And when you play a Barnstormer, not only are you getting the Nomi proc, you're also getting the Barnstormer proc. And now you have Bran on the board, you're getting double the proc. So yeah, that can quite easily boost the shop significantly. So it seems like a very powerful change. All right, then we have the Undead removals. This is important to see because we talked about Nightbane coming back. And I did say, man, if Kel'Thuzad stays, that's going to be a boring meta because now you're just going to have Kel'Thuzad next to a Nightbane and make a board of infinite damage. That's not going to be possible, so very good. Kel'Thuzad is out, Moros as well. That's sort of one package. Mummy for some economy out. Also Summoner and Knight, so pretty significant changes for Undead. So let's see what it gets replaced with. Corpse Recycler is now a thing. This used to be Corpse Refiner. They do this sometimes if they want to change the type of the minion. They sometimes re-release it. They did the same thing with Titus. Used to be Baron Rivendare, now it's Titus, just so that they wouldn't have to make it an Undead. So I'm assuming there's some problem with Corpse Refiner. I'm assuming that. I have no idea. But they couldn't just change it to being an Undead, so now they made a new card called Corpse Recycler. That's usually the reason they do that. Deathly Striker is a 6-drop. It has Avenge 4. Get a random Undead. Death Rattle. Summon it from your hand for this combat only. That seems like a lot of fun because we don't see a Nubarak being removed here. So you can still farm lots of attack on your Undead. So a Deathly Striker will then have attack. Then the Death Rattle pops and then you summon the Undead from your hand. That Undead might be something like a Handless, which has even more Death Rattles on it. And suddenly you have quite a lot of attack. On top of that, it's also economy, where if you get this early on a good Undead board with lots of tokens, you can farm Undead. And I don't think there's anything here that says it wouldn't summon 2 if you pull 2, right? It's Avenge 4 and Undead could do that. Undead could technically have 8 things die before this thing dies. I would assume that it's going to summon both the minions that you farmed in, which would be pretty silly. So this seems powerful if you have a good setup with some taunts, some reborns, where you can really farm and make the most out of this effect. Wandering Wight. After you summon a minion in combat, give it health equal to its attack. That also seems very relevant because we talked about how a Nubarak is still in and it's so easy to farm lots of attack on your tokens. If you have a Wight in the back and you summon a token with 50 damage, it's now a 50-50. That's all of a sudden pretty relevant because a lot of the time tokens, they die to anything, right? They die to a 1-1 because a lot of the time the token spawns as a 50 attack but 1 health unit. I don't know how impactful this is going to be when you think about how end games go, because most of the time in the end game, the way how Undeads beat other boards is that you just summon things with loads of attack and you chip away at your opponent's big minions. If you summon a 50-50 and it crashes into a 200-200, that's the same thing as a 50-1. I think this is more a mid-game thing where you summon bigger minions and therefore have a much stronger mid-game, because there's a lot of random cards on the board in the mid game. You might lose your 50 damage token. Well, it wouldn't be 50 damage, but let's say a 25 damage token to a 5 power unit. Now that wouldn't be the case because you're summoning it with 25 health. Now the golden version does say give it double its attack. So there is some argument for that. But still, if we realistically think about this, it's going to be difficult to still make high enough attack on your tokens that you're going to summon a token that's going to be able to value trade. That's some disgusting amounts of attack, right? And we're talking more than 100 attack tokens that get 200 health, because if we think endgame values, it's hard to value trade if you don't have at least 100 health. This card might not exactly make sense when you think about how Undead wins games. Now, I might be wrong about it, and maybe there's some really good endgame uses for this, so let's keep an eye out for that. Wisp in the Shell is a 5-drop. It's got a battle cry. Give a friendly minion 2 health, improved by each friendly minion that died last combat. This is also a little bit of a trickier one because Undead generally don't need that much health on their units. I think what this is really good for is play around Blaster, where you can just play Wisp in the Shell and buff your low HP Undead tokens. You can maybe use it to give your Titus some additional HP. You can really start to do the math on this where, let's say you have a bunch of reborns and death rattles. Maybe you have, 14 minions, 15, 16 minions that die in one combat, maybe more. That's an okay buff, but suddenly it's not something where you're like, oh my god, now I'm super strong because I was able to add another 30 health to my units. But it is very good at getting around stuff like Blaster. Handless. So at first glance, nothing changes here because it's still a 3-drop, summons a 2-1 with reborn. But the golden version now says summon 2 2-1 hands. Yes. Good job. I like that, because the really annoying thing about these cards is that tripling them makes them worse. Like, when you have 2 copies, it's better than the golden version. And anytime that is the case, that is just unsatisfying, because you're like, well, I could triple my unit and that's supposed to be a good thing, but I actually get weaker. So I like that they address those things and say, you know what, we're going to allow you to triple your unit and not feel bad about it. So yes, good change. I like this. Same thing with Harmless Bonehead. Harmless Bonehead summons 2 1/1s. The Death Rattle now summons 4 1/1s, because let's face it, the fact that you're summoning 1/1s or 2/2s generally does not matter. What matters is how many things you spawn, right? That matters for Avenge, that matters for stuff like Anubarak, attack buffs. Here, also very good change. I like this. You no longer get punished for tripling your Bonehead. Mummifier is on tier 3. Okay, cool. That's fair. That's some nice support for Undead. Scarlet Skull is back. Nothing really different here. Cadaver, same change here. It's now summoning 3 1/1s, but it is on tier 3. But the golden version summons 6. So we did not see Crasher being removed. So this is going to make the Macaw, Crasher, Titus synergy way better, because now you can golden your Caretaker, and all of a sudden you have 2 additional skeletons compared to the 4 from before. The downside is that if you only have a regular Caretaker, it is only 3 1/1s that it spawns. So you are losing 1 buff when it comes to the Crasher, which adds up, right? Because you have multipliers with Golden Crasher, Titus, Macaw, Reborn Macaw, and all that. That is it. That's all the reveals. I hope you guys are as excited for the new season as I am. There are so many changes. There's going to be so much to test and play around. So make sure you catch the pre-release event. That's going to be on the 2nd of December. We will be playing and testing the new cards, and I will be getting that new footage to you guys as soon as possible. And then on the 3rd of December, the patch releases, so maybe we can already do a little bit of theory crafting and see which strategies are going to be strong. Catch you next time.